My parents refused to attend my wedding because I got married before my golden brother. A year later, here's the full story and all the updates. I, 33F, got married 8 months ago after being in a relationship for 4 years. Everyone attended the wedding except my parents and my brother, Ethan, 31M. I wasn't particularly surprised about my brother's absence since we've never really gotten along, but my parents' decision not to attend was shocking, although, in hindsight, I probably should have seen it coming given our history. Let me provide some context about our family dynamics. My parents have always favored my brother over me, and honestly, I can't entirely blame them. He's excelled at just about everything his entire life. From the moment he could talk, he was the center of attention wherever he went. In elementary school, he was the star athlete, won every academic award, and was always the teacher's favorite. By high school, he was captain of the football team, valedictorian, and prom king. He's conventionally attractive, tall, fit, and with the kind of charisma that makes people gravitate toward him. During college, he even started a small tech startup that eventually landed him a lucrative position at a major firm. I still remember when his startup got its first major investor. My parents threw him a huge celebration, inviting all of our family and their friends. They even framed a photo of him shaking hands with the investor and hung it above the mantel, where it still sits today. When I graduated with my degree in engineering that same year, my parents gave me a polite, "Congratulations," before immediately shifting the conversation back to Ethan's company. After college, Ethan went on to climb the corporate ladder, earning promotions and awards left and right. At 31, he's now a senior executive with a luxurious apartment and a flashy car. Meanwhile, I work as a project manager for a solid mid-sized engineering firm. I love my job and take pride in my work, but it's not the kind of career that makes parents brag at family reunions. On top of that, I've always struggled with my weight, and growing up, my mother made it her mission to fix me. She signed me up for diet plans, fitness classes, and made constant comments like, "If you just put in the effort, you could look as good as Ethan." Meanwhile, Ethan was praised for eating whatever he wanted and still staying fit. By the time I hit high school, I'd learned to brush off their comments, but they still hurt. Over the years, I've come to terms with the differences in how my brother and I were treated. It used to crush me that my parents never showed the same pride in my accomplishments as they did in Ethan's, but I eventually accepted it. What choice did I have? For years, I did everything I could to earn their approval. I joined clubs they suggested, took classes they recommended, and even attempted to take part in one of Ethan's entrepreneurial ventures, which, unsurprisingly, didn't work out. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Ethan was the golden child, and I was just the other sibling. By my late 20s, I stopped trying to impress them. I focused on building my own life, finding a career I loved, making friends who truly valued me, and building a sense of self-worth outside of my family. I maintained minimal contact with my parents, mostly to avoid conflict, and limited our interactions to holidays and obligatory family gatherings. They didn't seem to mind much, they still had Ethan to fawn over. Then I met my now husband, Tom, through mutual friends at an industry event. Unlike my family, he saw me for who I really was. He appreciated my sense of humor, my intelligence, and even my physical quirks. He never once compared me to anyone else or suggested I needed to change. After 4 years together, he proposed during a quiet evening at home, just the two of us. It was simple and perfect. When I got engaged, I naturally told my parents. Their reaction should have been my first red flag. Instead of congratulating me, my mother simply asked if I was sure this was the right time and suggested I should lose weight before the wedding. My father said nothing beyond, "Well, congratulations, I guess." During the engagement party, my husband noticed something strange. My parents barely interacted with me and spent most of the evening whispering in a corner. Later, Tom told me he overheard them on the phone with Ethan, who was apparently upset. He caught snippets of the conversation, things like, "This wasn't supposed to happen," and, "We never thought she'd get married first." As we planned the wedding, my parents' indifference became clearer. My mother, who had spent years building Pinterest boards for Ethan's hypothetical wedding, showed zero interest in mine. When I found my wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown that made me feel beautiful, my mother's only comment was, "Well, it's practical for your body type." My parents ignored the invitations I sent them, both electronic and physical, and when I tried to follow up, they claimed they were too busy to RSVP. The day of the wedding came, and they didn't show up. Despite their absence, the ceremony was beautiful. Tom and I were surrounded by friends and family who truly cared about us, and we focused on celebrating our love. But I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments, like during the father-daughter dance I didn't have, when their absence stung. When I confronted my parents afterward, they claimed they'd never received an invitation. Even when I provided proof of delivery, they doubled down and said it must have been a mistake on my end. My husband and I pieced together the truth. They hadn't come because they couldn't handle the fact that I was getting married before Ethan. I tried to move past it, but the hurt lingered. Then, a few months ago, I heard through relatives that Ethan had gotten engaged to someone he'd been dating for about a year. My parents were overjoyed and immediately began planning an extravagant wedding for him. They were openly gushing about it in the family group chat I'd been excluded from, talking about booking exclusive venues and going to designer suit fittings with Ethan. All the involvement and excitement they had denied me was being poured into his wedding. But something unexpected happened. Many of our relatives declined to attend Ethan's engagement party. It turns out my parents' absence at my wedding had sparked conversations among the family. When relatives asked why my parents weren't there, I simply told them the truth: they couldn't handle me getting married before their favorite child. I didn't embellish or try to gain sympathy. I just laid out the facts as they were. A few days ago, my parents called me, furious. They accused me of deliberately spreading lies to make them look bad and claimed I was trying to ruin Ethan's wedding out of jealousy. According to them, several family members were now making excuses not to attend his wedding events because of the rumors I had started. My brother even vented to one of our cousins, who told him that people were hesitant to celebrate his wedding because of how my parents had treated me. My parents insisted that I was being malicious and petty, but here's the thing: I've only ever told the truth. If that truth makes them look bad, maybe it's time they reflected on their behavior rather than blaming me for the consequences. Update 2 weeks have passed since that call, and I finally decided to confront my parents directly. They had been bombarding me with messages, accusing me of ruining their reputation and jeopardizing the family. I'd had enough. When I called them, they immediately launched into their usual accusations. "You're spreading lies about us because you're jealous of Ethan," my mother said. Instead of defending myself, as I always used to, I tried something new. I agreed with her, but not in the way she expected. "You're right," I said. "I am jealous. But not of Ethan's success or his wedding. I'm jealous of the unconditional love and support you've given him, something you never even tried to give me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then my mother scoffed and said I was being dramatic and unfair. She claimed they had always treated Ethan and me equally. That's when something inside me snapped. I laid it all out. I told them about every time my achievements were ignored in favor of Ethan's. About how my high school graduation dinner was cancelled because Ethan had a business pitch meeting. About how they had spent more money on his prom tuxedo than they had on my entire first semester of college. My father tried to interrupt, claiming I was exaggerating, but I didn't stop. I told them how much it hurt to see my wedding treated like an afterthought while they bent over backward to make Ethan's wedding a grand affair. Instead of taking accountability, they turned it back on me. "If you felt this way, why didn't you say something sooner?" my mother demanded, as if I hadn't spent years trying to express my feelings only to be dismissed. Then my mother said something that finally made everything crystal clear: "We always knew you were insecure about Ethan, but we didn't think you'd stoop so low as to sabotage the family out of spite. We raised you better than this." Her words stung, but they also confirmed what I had known deep down for years: my feelings would never matter to them as much as protecting Ethan's image. For the first time in my life, I didn't apologize or backtrack. I told them exactly what I thought. "You're right, you did raise me. You raised me to believe I would never be good enough. That my achievements would always come second to Ethan's. That my feelings were less important than your perfect image of him. But you also taught me something you didn't intend to, that I deserve better than this." There was a long silence before my father spoke. His tone was calm but cold. "If you're so determined to see us as the villains, maybe we should stop pretending we're a family. Clearly, you've already made your choice." My mother added, "We've always tried to treat you fairly, but maybe you just can't handle the fact that you'll never be the center of attention. That's not our fault, Claire." I didn't argue. What would have been the point? Even in this conversation, they couldn't take responsibility for their actions. I simply said, "Goodbye," and hung up. After the call, I felt something unexpected: relief. For years, I had carried the weight of trying to win their approval, of hoping they might one day see me as an equal. Letting go of that hope was painful, but it also felt like setting down a burden I had been carrying for too long. My husband found me on the porch later, staring at the sunset. He sat beside me and held my hand. I looked at him and said, "They're never going to change, are they?" He squeezed my hand and replied, "No. But you have, and that's what matters." He's right. I have changed. The little girl who craved her parents' approval is gone. The woman who came out of that conversation doesn't need their validation anymore. Update 2: It's been 3 days since I confronted my parents, and the situation has taken yet another unexpected turn. This time, Ethan decided to get involved, and let's just say his attempt to mediate did not go as planned. Yesterday morning, I received a long, carefully worded email from Ethan. It started off politely enough, but it didn't take long for his true intentions to shine through. "Claire, I've been hearing from Mom and Dad about everything that's been happening, and I'm really disappointed in how you're handling this. They've always done their best for both of us, and it's hurtful to see you painting them as bad parents just because you're insecure about your life choices. They've always supported you, even when you made decisions they didn't agree with." The email went on with a mix of subtle digs and patronizing advice. "I know your wedding didn't turn out how you wanted, but that's no reason to make it a competition. My wedding isn't about you, Claire, and I think it's time you stop trying to drag everyone else down." I didn't bother replying. After years of dealing with Ethan's self-righteous tone, I've learned that engaging with him only gives him more control over the situation. Instead, I blocked his email address and moved on. But Ethan wasn't done. A few hours later, my husband, Tom, called me at work. He was laughing so hard that it took him a few tries to get the words out. Apparently, Ethan had found Tom's number, likely through a mutual family acquaintance, and decided to send him a series of texts. The first one started innocently enough: "Hi, Tom, this is Ethan, Claire's brother. I wanted to reach out because I'm concerned about some things happening in the family." But as the messages continued, they became more condescending. Ethan told Tom that, as my husband, he had a responsibility to guide me toward better behavior. He suggested that Tom help me understand the bigger picture before I damage family relationships beyond repair. The icing on the cake was when Ethan tried to appeal to what he must have thought were Tom's ambitions. "Maintaining good relationships with successful family members like me can be beneficial for everyone's future," Ethan wrote. "I'd hate for Claire's actions to harm not only her reputation but yours as well." Tom, who is not only wildly successful in his own right but also completely immune to my family's manipulative tactics, was thoroughly amused. He showed me the messages when I got home, and we both couldn't stop laughing. It was almost funny how transparent Ethan's attempts at control were. He had no idea how strong my relationship with Tom was or how little we cared about his opinion. What struck me most, though, was how Ethan's behavior mirrored what he'd done throughout our childhood. When he couldn't get what he wanted from me directly, he tried to use others to pressure me into compliance. Same tactics, different audience. Looking back, I can see how much Ethan thrived on being the golden child. It wasn't just that my parents favored him, it was that he actively worked to maintain that dynamic. Every time I achieved something, he made sure to outshine it. Every time I made a friend, he found a way to undermine me. But here's the difference now: I've changed, and his manipulation doesn't work on me anymore. 10 years ago, Ethan's words would have left me questioning myself. 5 years ago, I would have been furious and defensive. Today, I just find it exhausting, and honestly, a little sad. Tom, being the wonderful man that he is, responded to Ethan with exactly the right tone. "Hi, Ethan. Thanks for reaching out. As Claire's husband, my priority is supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. If you have concerns, I suggest you address them directly with her. Wishing you all the best." When Ethan didn't get the reaction he wanted, he sent one final text: "I see Claire's been poisoning you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." We laughed about it for the rest of the evening, joking that maybe we should send Ethan a "thank you" card for giving us free entertainment. This whole situation has reinforced something I've been learning throughout this process: people like Ethan and my parents thrive on control. They can't handle it when their carefully constructed narrative starts to fall apart. But the best part of this whole debacle? It's brought Tom and me even closer. We spent the evening laughing at Ethan's messages and planning a weekend getaway, completely unbothered by his veiled threats about social consequences. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Free from their expectations, free from their manipulation, and free from the constant need to prove myself. Update 3: 2 weeks have passed since Ethan's failed attempt to involve my husband, and things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. My parents have been on a frantic campaign to repair their image, but their efforts are only making things worse. Through family members, I've learned that my parents have been calling relatives individually, trying to set the record straight. They've been claiming that I deliberately excluded them from my wedding invitations to make them look bad. They even concocted a story that I sent the invites to an outdated email address and an old physical address. The funny thing? My parents have lived in the same house for decades and haven't changed their email addresses since the early 2000s. But the more they try to spin their version of events, the more damage they're doing to themselves. Many relatives aren't buying their story, and some have even come forward with their own observations about my parents' favoritism over the years. One of my aunts shared that my mother has pulled similar stunts before, always finding ways to make sure Ethan stayed in the spotlight. What's been truly surprising is how the extended family has responded to all of this. Several relatives who were initially involved in planning Ethan's wedding have now withdrawn their support. For example, the exclusive venue my parents had booked through a family connection may no longer be available. Even the high-end suit boutique Ethan was supposed to use, owned by a family friend, suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Last weekend, things came to a head at a family gathering. From what I heard, someone innocently asked my mother about my wedding photos, which led to her completely losing it. She went on a loud, defensive rant about how I'd changed since getting married and accused me of trying to tear the family apart. Her outburst shocked several relatives who hadn't known about the situation and further damaged her carefully curated image. The irony of it all? My parents' desperate attempts to preserve their reputation are exactly what's ruining it. Every time they try to explain away their absence from my wedding or justify their actions, they reveal more about the toxic dynamics they've been trying to hide for years. Even relatives who had stayed neutral in the past are now openly supporting me. My uncle, my father's brother, who has always avoided taking sides to keep the peace, recently reached out to apologize for not speaking up sooner. He told me that seeing how my parents and Ethan have behaved over the past few months has been eye-opening. He and his family have decided not to attend Ethan's wedding, saying they no longer want to support the favoritism my parents continue to perpetuate. For the first time, I'm realizing how much power the truth has. I haven't had to do anything to expose my parents' behavior, their own actions have done it for me. Looking back, I spent so many years walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace and avoid upsetting the delicate balance in my family. But now I see that, keeping the peace, was just another way of enabling their toxic behavior. My husband summed it up perfectly. They spent years building this facade of a perfect family, but they built it on a foundation of favoritism and manipulation. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. As for me, I'm doing better than I ever thought possible. The weight of trying to earn their approval is gone. The anxiety of trying to manage Ethan's feelings or protect my parents' reputation has lifted. For the first time in my life, I'm free to focus on my own happiness without worrying about how it reflects on my family. I haven't responded to my parents' latest accusations or Ethan's dramatic texts. I don't need to. The truth is already doing the work for me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about letting the truth speak for itself. To everyone who has supported me through this journey, thank you. Your advice, encouragement, and kind words have meant more than I can say. If there's one thing this experience has taught me, it's that true family isn't about blood, it's about the people who genuinely support you, love you for who you are, and bring peace into your life. Ethan and my parents can keep their drama. I'll keep my peace. Thank you for watching the video, subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to have radish and real stories with you. Have a great day.